Hello and welcome to Tales from the Doghouse, Separation Anxiety Explained. I am Ness Jones. I'm in Australia from Separation Anxiety on Dogs Decoded. And with me today is the wonderful, the beautiful, the lovely... What? I couldn't hear you.
You couldn't? Can you hear me now?
It sounded like you were mouthing it. It looks like you were mouthing it, but you didn't.
That's because I couldn't live up to all your I couldn't live up to all of those compliments you were throwing out my way. Okay, so today on our show we are going to talk about a little bit of maternal care, but mostly premature maternal separation and its possible effects on separation related behavior. So it's a little bit of a geeky one, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yes. It's we wanted to talk about a research paper. Is it a research paper? It's probably more of a blog, I think.
Yeah, I think it's more of a blog, but by a really solid person.
Oh my God, she's amazing. So Karolina Westlund, who is an associate professor in ethology, and her company is called PLoS. PLoS? I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah.
I don't know. I never talked to her in person, but I would love to.
She is amazing. I actually interviewed her for my first summit in July last year. So she's amazing. She's not a doggy person though. She's quite upfront about saying that she's the focus of most of her research has been with monkeys. But she, you know, the stuff she comes out with is amazing. So yeah. Highly recommend getting onto her website, and we'll have that link in the show notes
for the specific article that we are discussing today.
Well, not just the specific article for anything related to behavior. Yeah.
Totally. Because a lot of what I think they find when they are doing research is that depending what the subject is, but across mammals and especially across social species, that a lot of the same conclusions hold, whether it's rats or primates or dogs or whatever. So I think that is worth saying, that even though some of the articles that some of the subjects she speaks about is not necessarily related to dogs, it still can be related to dogs.
Oh, definitely.
And she is so wise. Okay. So basically, there are kind of two pieces. There's the maternal care piece, and there's maternal separation piece. And so those are both, she's kind of positing that that's the propensity for separation related behaviors may be increased for dogs who either or have poor maternal care conditions or are separated from their mother, like their dam, too early, so that the risk of separation anxiety is higher, not that there's like a one-to-one correlation, right? So just putting that up front. And there have been studies about, there's been like some really heartbreaking, actually, social isolation studies. And there's been a lot of quality of caregiving studies in rats specifically, I know, but I think they were I was listening to a podcast, and I really wish I could remember what it was at this point, but it was a podcast about, they were looking at the maternal styles of service dogs, because it was easy to study them because, and there were, a lot of them, and they would follow the puppies. So there is a lot to be said for, maternal care and, better maternal care resulting into less stress sensitive offspring.
Yeah, and just so the blog post she wrote was in 2016, and it was called
Mhm.
"Our Dog Separated from Mum Too Early," and I guess she's talking about yeah. I mean, look, we do have to discuss the fact that a bitch that's got puppies on board, you know, if that bitch is in a state of stress and not getting its needs met, whatever, whatever that might look
Mhm.
like, that's not going to bode well for the puppy's ability to, I guess, cope so much
Mhm.
when they leave. But
Yeah.
when they are born, when they leave. Sorry.
Or when they leave. Both of those things are true, right?
Yeah. But I find it really interesting what she says about the the age that we adopt pups out to their new owners, guardians, and it's kind of I've really found it quite interesting in the fact that the theory is if we send the pups out at 8 weeks, 7 to 8 weeks, some people,
Mhm.
breeders,
Mhm.
and they bond with their new guardians. But what she's saying perhaps is that, are we setting the dogs up for perhaps having separation anxiety related or separation related behaviors down the track?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's interesting, and I wonder if there are studies to back up the increased bonding at that 7 to 8 week period, because I have worked in rescue, and hardly any of the dogs or puppies in the program are that young, and I find that they bond extremely quickly with even just the foster, much less somebody who's adopting them. And so I find that really interesting, that the argument that 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 people feel like makes the case for adopting them out earlier is that bonding one, because I just I've not seen that be a problem. And that's just my experience. So I don't know if there has been any research to back that up. I did a quick search and didn't find anything that was that popped out at me.
But that is a really good point. I mean, when a rescue, no matter what age, goes into its new home,
Yeah.
I mean, they can bond very, very quickly with
Yeah.
the new
Yeah.
family person, what have you.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, that's an interesting one.
I actually caution a lot of like adopters
Yeah.
to make sure that they're spreading the love in those early days, because a lot of times they can attach like so strongly. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing that they're attaching strongly, but just that they can also be okay with other people.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
guess it
something.
depends what we're talking about when we say bonding as well, when we're talking about a puppy, or, is, I guess what they're saying is maybe that a puppy that is with mum for that extra 4 weeks, perhaps, up to 12 weeks,
Mhm.
is more indifferent about people when they go to their new home, if they haven't
Mhm.
experienced other people, if their main focus in life is dogs, is mum and its mates, and then they go into a new home and they're like, yeah, people, whatever. And so the human side isn't getting their needs met in the terms of, in the sense of, here's my new puppy coming into my home and, oh my God, I want to love on it. And puppy's like, yeah, I don't care about you. I'm not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
But she was also talking about, I think one of the biggest complaints or woes of new puppy parents is the mouthing and biting. And I think she was also saying that a lot of times bite inhibition is more developed in the dogs that stay longer too, and that they tend to be more robust as far as stress goes, and resilience, I guess, more robust in bouncing back from stressful experiences. So I think I do think that's an interesting trade-off if you're thinking about it that way. Having an anxious dog, robustness sounds really good to me. And I think, paying attention to that resilience piece, and that is something that you can develop. But if the kind of stress system is already kind of sensitized, then even if you can make headway in making and helping your dog be more resilient, that system is already kind of primed in a way. If the dog has a more sensitive system, like that they're saying, that could be that is associated with either poor mothering or being separated early. So
I think some of it comes back to the breeder without sort of, when the puppies, before the puppies are born, mum has to have all her needs met, a stress-free environment, all that's going to make a big difference. But once they're Welsh, they also, the same applies. And if we are saying that, puppies do better in terms of separation anxiety if they're with mum longer, and all those other things are met, the stress-free environment, early socialization. If we're worried about the pup not bonding well within its new home, then while it's not always feasible for the new guardian to visit the puppies after they're born, because maybe they're just living across the country or in a different country completely.
Right.
Perhaps maybe the breeder can then get, I don't know if this, make sure the puppy's exposed to, is exposed to lots of things, including people and children, and, building that confidence in the dog, and et cetera, et cetera. There's got to be a workaround, I guess, if bonding still occurs with the new home. But again, like as you said, with, for example, rescues going into a new home, they do bond. So, that's the missing link, isn't it? Like this, as far as we're aware, there's no studies on that. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I do think this is definitely one of those ideas to talk through and do the what ifs and everything. But the bottom line is that we do need more research on it to know the true effects. But I did think one of the things that she was talking about in the article that I thought was really interesting was that that with kittens, their kind of sensitive period for being exposed to things and socialization and development and that sort of thing is like 2 to 7 weeks. But most people rehome kittens when they're 12 weeks. But with puppies, the critical window is longer, 3 to 12 weeks generally. But we send them home at 7 to 8 weeks, which I do think is changing a little bit. I do think that there are some more breeders that are looking at benefits of having the puppies until, let's say 12 weeks. I haven't heard programs talking about 16 weeks. But 12 weeks is something that I've heard more breeders talking about, and just realizing that is the puppy's critical window. So if the breeder isn't doing any of the socialization type stuff, then that, what does that trade-off look like? Right. And so we really do want to make sure that if you're getting a dog from a breeder, that you're asking questions, right? I think that, and most breeders, I think, want the best for their puppies. There are some people that are in it for, the dollar bottom line, but let's assume that, most people are in it because they love the breed, and, they love the puppies and raising them and all that kind of stuff. But, not all breeders are are equal. Some pay a lot more attention to, making sure that there's good genetic matches, and like you said, that the mama dog has her needs addressed and is not stressed, and that the birthing process goes as easily as possible, and that that the early experiences of the puppies are positive. And there are programs like puppy culture, and there's another one that I can't remember the name, that help breeders with like kind of a step-by-step developmental milestone. If your puppy is doing this, these are the types of things that could help long-term, as far as socialization and just building resilience and that sort of thing. Do you have puppy culture? Have you heard of puppy culture?
Yeah. No, it's a good program. I think one of the things with that blog post of Karolina's is I read some of the comments, and there was one lady who is a breeder, and she'd been doing it for years, and she was originally sending puppies home, I don't know, 7 to 8 weeks. I can't quite remember the full detail. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, I forget why, but she decided to start sending them home at 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. And she said it was really interesting because when she was sending them home at, to their new home at 7 or 8 weeks, she was constantly getting calls from the buyers saying, help me with this, help me with that, help me with this. Yes. And then she said, once I changed that and I started doing it at 12 weeks, she said, I never heard from them. She said, I had to ring them up and say, how's it going? Because the puppies were doing so much better. And I just found that really interesting. So, I think it's a better way of setting both the new dog guardian and the puppies up for success. But I also think we need to talk about genetics, because there are some breeders out there talking about that are breeding puppies that are genetically geared to be anxious, unfortunately, breeding bloodlines that they shouldn't be. And, there's some brilliant breeders out there, brilliant ones that, they hip and elbow tests, and they make sure their dogs haven't got any defects. They do the DNA tests and making sure their dogs are robust and competent. Unfortunately, there's some that genetically the pups come out and they're already potentially got that gene in them that's going to be anxious, and then there's the other ones that aren't providing the right stress-free environment for the bitch or the pup. Where basically those ones are sort of setting the dogs up to fail, unfortunately. So I think the key here is, if you're looking for a puppy, do your research. Make sure you get to a good breeder.
Because unfortunately, a lot of the anxiety-based behaviors aren't necessarily evident until like social maturation. And so you can have this puppy that, seems fine, and then, come 1 or 1.5, and all of a sudden all of these behaviors are popping up. And some of them, like separation anxiety or overreactions to other dogs, or, whatever it is, can really impact the relationship you have with your dog's welfare, all of the things. And so it's, you can never guarantee that when you have a puppy, even if the breeder has done everything 100% correctly, you could still come out with a dog that does have those problems. But certainly, when you're picking out a dog, I would make sure you're doing your research, do everything that you can, ask a lot of questions to make sure that, the part that you can control, that you're being active on.
Yeah. And there are studies that say that dogs that are getting the correct socialization, environmental confidence building, all that sort of stuff between the ages, pups between the ages of 5 months and 10 months are less likely to get separation related behaviors. I mean, we might say actually from earlier than that, but that was what this particular study focused on.
Yeah. It was interesting that because that's kind of outside of what we would consider the sensitive period or socialization period, or whatever you want to call it. It was a Bradshaw study that you're talking about. But it's interesting that they picked that time period, and almost more meaningful. I don't know, that had a effect on the propensity for separation related behaviors.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're saying let's leave the puppy with mum up to 12 weeks, and obviously ideally the breeder's doing all those things that are in a safe way for the puppy, so it's not terrified, but exposing it to a lot of different things. And then so we're saying 12 weeks, that's 3 months, so there's still that 2-month window, isn't there, between the Bradshaw study but I mean, obviously we still want to get that puppy out there and exposing it to life in a safe manner. We don't want to throw the puppy in the deep end. It always as an aside, it always amazes me when you've got a dog, especially like a Labrador, and they don't want to go in the water, and you're like, but Labradors love swimming, and it's because they have been thrown in the deep end, literally. Like, here, you can learn to swim. Chuck the puppy. And puppy panics, and then they don't want to ever go into the water again. When we talk about socialization with pups, it's got to be done in a safe, kind way, so puppy's not panicking, freaking out, and having therefore an adverse reaction to whatever it is for the rest of its life.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also, like, if you're thinking about it, during that sensitive period, it just means that they're more sensitive to learning, right? So they're like little sponges, and so one single bad experience can really take hold in a way that maybe would and maybe wouldn't later on, right? So you need less repetitions for learning, but those really bad experiences do tend to stick. So, when we're thinking about exposing our puppies to things, we're wanting to do that, like you said, in a really gentle way and erring on the side of caution always. If you're thinking that your puppy might be a little sensitive to sounds, give them a lot of distance, turn down the volume when possible. Don't take them to a street fair because that's just going to be overwhelming and really not going to help your case.
But also, that also applies to home alone time, obviously. So when we've got a puppy, we don't want to just see you later, I'm going out for 5 hours or something. We do it gradually for a puppy. And because if you go out and your puppy freaks out, it's just going to make it harder next time you go out. So we don't want the dog to be over its ability to cope in terms of threshold. And so when we talk about not exposing pups to things that are going to be scary, that includes home alone time.
Absolutely. And I think that I know that we hit this up a lot, but set up a camera. And it doesn't have to be like you go out and buy a camera, like even, in those early days when you're just trying to make sure, is my puppy okay with this? You can set up a laptop with Zoom on it, or, whatever. If you don't already have a camera, I'm finding more and more people do, but if you don't have a camera, it's not that you have to go out and invest in one if you don't necessarily, if your dog doesn't necessarily have separation related behaviors, but it's always good. I just say with puppies, rescues, I just urge anybody to check in with their dogs and make sure that they're okay, because some dogs aren't as overt as other ones. And so you just might never know, so anyways.
Yeah, no, true. And I mean, it doesn't have, as you said, doesn't have to be a cost thing. Zoom, Skype, a Facebook Live, just make sure you set it to only me, not public, because people will be like, But hopefully it's yeah, what is this? But yeah, hopefully you're doing it with two devices. So you've got one on the inside watching pup, and you've got one with you, so you actually have it live as opposed to watching a recording after the fact. Because if it's live, then you can assure your puppy isn't going over threshold and over the ability it can cope. And we have lots of episodes on thresholds, don't we, Stacey?
And puppies.
Yes.
So yeah, if you do have a puppy or even a new rescue, which we also do have an episode on rescue dogs. I do think both of those dogs, because they're a new dog to your home, we really do want to make sure that they're okay with being home alone. Now, if your dog if there's like a big routine change, an existing dog that's been with you for a while, you have a big routine change, or the dog is sick, or something, changes in the environment or the routines, I also think that's another good time to check in and make sure everything's okay. Or even if it's just something like every once in a while, the rug by the side door, like, Rowan will scratch at it and it'll get wrinkled, so I can't open the door. And so that's a good time for me to then be like, was it just him kind of trying to make a comfortable bed for himself, or is he starting to experience anxiety as it relates to home alone time? And then I would set up my camera to be at that door for the next few times I go out, just to make sure it wasn't a trend. It was just like a one-off, like, okay, he was making a bed or, whatever. So anyways, that's also like, if you see something suspicious, that's another good time to check in.
Just as an aside, anybody looking at those old episodes, whether it's puppies or rescues or thresholds or whatever, some of them aren't on YouTube. For anybody that's just watching us on YouTube, they are on the podcast episodes, so you can find them on all good listening apps, or my website, and I'm sure Stacey's website as well.
Yes, mine as well. Yep. One of the things, getting back to the article that Karolina wrote, there was one thing that I thought was really, really interesting, and it was with monkeys. And the monkey, there were some.
Did you watch the video?
Yeah, I did. I did watch the video, but that's not what I was going to say. There was monkeys. There was a study where monkeys were taken away from the mother early, and I don't know anything about monkeys, so I don't know whatever. But this is what she was saying, and she knows a lot about primates. So she was saying they were taken away from their mother early, but they were with other monkeys like their age, right? Like other young monkeys. So it wasn't like a social isolation type of thing, but they were taken away from their mother early. And she said, while they had good social skills still, those monkeys, they had extreme behavioral and physiological reactions to environmental changes, like brief separations. So I was like, So I thought that was a particularly interesting piece, especially for us, as a point to kind of chew on, to I don't know, to me, it points to there being a stronger connection. There's also a paper, it was a 2015 paper by Tira and Lohi, about early life experiences associated with canine anxieties. And they did feel like there was a connection between maternal care and early separations. So it does seem like she was kind of looking at it as I think this makes sense that there would be a connection. Yeah. Karolina was, but I think there's also research to back it up, although it sounds like there could be more detailed research in drawing that connection maybe a little bit more clearly. Like, I think what is 8 weeks versus 10 weeks versus 12 weeks versus 16 weeks, and how much does, I know that breed size can the smaller dogs tend to
develop
mature faster than the larger breed. So like, how much does that come into play? And there's like a lot of really interesting things to think about there.
Yeah, it was interesting. Part of she talks about the mum dog, the bitch. She doesn't want to keep feeding the puppies after 8 weeks because they're sharp little puppy teeth. But that doesn't mean she's not teaching them stuff still. So she's still developing them to be good, well-rounded dogs. And I think she talks about the wolves of the wilds will sometimes regurgitate food for a 12-week-old pup. Obviously, their wolves aren't dogs, but it's quite interesting. Just because they're not feeding the pups anymore doesn't mean they're not developing them. That's obviously
I thought it was that part was really interesting to me because it was like that 7 or 8 week part where she was the dam was feeling more I'm done kind of behavior. But the puppies showed an increase in contacting and care seeking behaviors around that same time. So it's kind of that, I mean, we see it with humans too, that kind of push and pull of, I guess just like the social species of being like, one of them's like, I'm ready. And the other one's like, not so much. And that can, I'm sure, like, I don't know in dogs, but definitely with people that can vary over time and depending on the stage. So
I remember when
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. When Chase had her puppies, she was, they were like chasing her around and she was running away from them in the backyard. Like, just leave me alone. So, but, because she was ready for them to stop feeding. Now, the interesting thing, I guess, is that we interpret it as in she's ready for them to leave the nest, but possibly it's not like that. She's still got stuff to teach them, but it's just not, I don't want to feed you anymore. We're going to have to do this. You've got sharp little puppy teeth now and I'm done with that. So, developmentally, she knows that we're ready to not feed off her, but there's other stuff she can teach.
I think that's a really important distinction too, because like with people, we would maybe stop nursing them at, generally speaking, I mean, I'm sure it varies widely with different, I'm not going to give an age. So we would stop nursing at a certain time, but it's not like then they would be out of the nest.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like they would still be in the nest. And she had mentioned that with social animals, typically they live with the group that they're born into until sexual maturation, which is, that's like for dogs 4 to 6.
Depends on the breed,
depending on the breed. So that was an interesting point too. Like maybe 12 weeks isn't enough. Maybe, it just kind of blows your mind when you start thinking about these things. But then the monkey thing the video that you were just mentioning, that's exactly what was happening.
Guys,
right?
We're going to share the link for this blog post in the show notes. Make sure you check out the video that's embedded in it. It's very funny.
So what's happening in the videos for those who always need to follow up on the links, but it's like, but then you get home and you're on to other things.
Yeah, totally.
What's happening is that there's the baby wants to nurse and the mother is trying to wean the baby. And so she like tells him no. And this monkey has like a flat out temper tantrum. Like, and everybody, all the other monkeys in the group are like, some of them are like, have their hand over their face. Did you see that? I was like, wow. So everybody else is ignoring this baby monkey. And this monkey is like flat out throwing it like a toddler tantrum is what this monkey is having. So, but the monkey is still part of the group, right? So it's that distinction that we're talking about is like maybe when we see those behaviors from the dam about like, I don't want to feed you anymore, they're not necessarily saying, and also could you leave?
Go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, so it's an interesting article, and certainly one that should be discussed, I think, especially among breeders and buyers, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it helps, I mean, geez, if it helps dogs not have issues like separation anxiety, then we need to look at it more closely.
Right.
Studies. We need more studies.
Yeah, I know. I wish studies didn't take so long to conduct, like, because this would need to be a longitudinal study, because they would have to be following the puppies into adulthood, right?
Yes, yeah.
I really wish I could remember that service dog blog that I was listening. It wasn't a service dog blog, but in the blog they were talking about service dogs and maternal caregiving and stuff like that. It was a while ago though, so I can't remember it. But anyways, that type of thing where you're like, I know the studies are some of them might even be happening, and we just have to be patient.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyways, I do think that there will be more separation studies covering separation related behaviors, because it just is a topic that, well, probably I'm biased because because that's what I do. And so I see it everywhere. But I do feel like it's become, especially after the pandemic, I do feel like it's become more recognized by pet parents as something to look for and be aware of.
For sure. Cool.
So anyways.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Tales from the Doghouse, Separation Anxiety Explained. I am Ness Jones.
And I am Stacey Bell. No. I jumped the gun.
That's okay. You can find me on nessjones.com.
And I am Stacey Bell with Focused Fun in the US. You can find me at focusedfun.net. And
make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yep.
If you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye.
We'll see you next time. Bye.